Hello, I'm the 10-minute English teacher. Let's get you exam ready. Today we're thinking about Romeo and Juliet by William Shakespeare, and I'm going to be providing a summary to Act 2. In front of you now, you've got the characters from the play. If you're not familiar with them, you might want to check out my guide to the characters. Otherwise, let's move on and let's think about what happens in Act 2. In front of you now, you've got the major events of Act 2. So this is what happens in Act 2. And by the end of our time together, you should be confident in being able to explain the major events of Act 2. So let's move on and find out what happens. Okay, we start with the chorus. So it's easy to forget about the chorus. That's our omniscient, which is a word that means all-knowing narrator. Just as we started with Act 1, with the prologue, at the beginning of Act 2, the chorus speaks to the audience and introduces the act. And the chorus says that Romeo and Juliet have been bewitched by the charm of looks. Not a positive endorsement of their feelings for each other, given how people felt about witches at the time. So remember, there's two ways that we can look at Romeo and Juliet. We can see them as these misunderstood, poetic, loving young people who can't exist in a world of conflict, or we can see them as these bewitched, ignorant and naive young people who disrespect their parents. There's two ways of looking at them. We've then got the balcony scene. So Romeo ditches his friends and climbs the walls of the Capulet mansion to see Juliet again. He hears her talking to herself about leaving her family for him, and then they speak. Romeo and Juliet declare their love for each other, and they talk about marriage. Then we meet Friar Lawrence. So Romeo chooses to talk to Friar Lawrence rather than his parents about Juliet, seeing as he's a neutral in the conflict between the families. Friar Lawrence can't believe Romeo's feelings have changed so quickly and goes on a rant about young people and how foolish they are. Then he agrees to marry them without their parents knowing, which is a terrible plan, and his first terrible plan of the play. So Friar Lawrence, we meet him and he makes his mind up very quickly to marry Romeo and Juliet. Then Benvolio and Mercutio talk about a letter Tybalt has sent to Romeo's father's house. So Romeo was at the ball, we saw that at the end of Act 1. Tybalt saw Romeo there and wanted to challenge him. He sent a letter to Romeo's house to challenge Romeo to a fight. Tybalt's as hard as nails and Romeo is weak and lovesick, which is what Benvolio and Mercutio speak about. Shakespeare's hyping up a fight here that's going to happen later on, just in case you're getting bored of the theme of love at this point. Then the nurse goes and speaks with Romeo. So we've got Friar Lawrence deciding that he's going to marry the pair. And now we've got the nurse going to see Romeo and to find out his intentions. So Romeo arrives as his friends try to find out where he was last night. And the nurse then turns up. She speaks with Romeo about his intentions. And he tells her to tell Juliet he's booked them in with Friar Lawrence to get married. Just to remind us, the nurse is low status and not Juliet's mother. She's acting as if she is. Romeo pays her for her troubles. She goes home and tells Juliet. Then we end with them just about to get married. So rather than the huge event her wedding to Paris would have been, Juliet turns up to marry Romeo at Friar Lawrence's cell in secrecy and without guests. The friar is acting as if he was their parent here, which Shakespeare drives home when he calls Juliet daughter. And the act ends with him welcoming Juliet and promising to get them married quickly. They stumble that run fast, which is something that he says earlier on to Romeo when he's talking to him initially about his feelings for Juliet. So a reminder to you here, these are the events of the act. You should now sort of be able to explain exactly what happens. And now let's think about quotes that we need to know. So, quotes to know for Act 2. The chorus at the beginning says that they have been bewitched by the charm of looks. It's quite interesting thinking about the different ways that we can feel towards Romeo and Juliet. Are we meant to be seeing them as quite naive and acting far too quickly here? We've got the balcony scene. There are some very iconic, famous lines in the balcony scene, but these ones are really interesting for you to take away and know. Romeo says, "Speak again, bright angel." And that image of the angel is really interesting because it reflects the idea that Romeo is worshipping Juliet, which is negative. But we've also got a little bit of dramatic irony. Anytime there's an image of death or any allusions to heaven, we've got that reminder being provided from the chorus, from the prologue rather. We know that they're going to die at the end of the play. When Friar Lawrence speaks to Romeo, we've got young men's love then lies not truly in their hearts but in their eyes. So he's sort of claiming that Romeo just is lustful and just attracted to people and doesn't really understand love because of his youth. And then decides this alliance may so happy prove to turn your household's rancour to pure love. So he thinks that somehow by getting Romeo and Juliet married in secrecy behind their parents' back, that's going to somehow end their feud. And he says they stumble that run fast, which is a really interesting, ironic quote, because it's really philosophical and wise. But then minutes later, he's deciding that it's a good idea for them to get married. At the very end, when they're about to be married, Friar Lawrence speaks to Juliet and says, "These violent delights have violent ends." He says, "Love moderately." He's not being moderate in getting them married so very quickly. And earlier on, when he was talking about, if you run too quickly, you'll fall over, he talks about making their marriage short work. So he's going to get on with that as quickly as possible, which is definitely a warning sign for us. Okay, if you want to take your revisions further, here are some key questions for you. Can you recall the major events of Act 2 without looking? If you can't, feel free to use the play bar to revisit them or just rewatch the video. What do you make of the chorus and what the chorus says at the beginning of the act? And how many of the key quotes can you recall? Revisit them and make yourself some flashcards, or just watch again and test yourself. Okay, check out the other videos on my channel. I'll continue to add content. Feel free to ask something you'd like to see me cover in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share, and keep revising.